Okay, I'm going to start by saying that this is my opinion. I just want to say that I understand the concerns of the players that want to change ZZZ, and you're allowed to have your own opinion. But I'm going to explain in this vid the thought process behind my opinion to hopefully open a meaningful discussion. Let me address the elephant in the room, the TV mode. I've seen a lot of people hate on it, and that is only good when they want to have it like in Hollow Zero. They say it's absolutely unnecessary for the story and they just want to jump straight into combat. Okay, I get it, the Hoyo style presentation is top tier. I know that's something we can all agree with. I'll be bringing this up later, so keep this in mind. But for now, let me tell you something. The game is Hollow Zero. The whole thing is based around Hollow Zero and the TV mode. Have you ever seen a roguelike? No, not one of the games from the genre, but the idea that spawned the genre. Roguelike is a term because it literally describes a game that plays like Rogue. Rogue was a dungeon-crawling RPG released sometime in the 1980s. Its features as a game is as follows: procedurally generated levels, permadeath, and turn-based. It means that each time you play, the dungeon layout is different, and if your character dies, the game is over and you have to start from scratch. The characters and maps are represented in symbols, and this is really what the game looks like. It's not a representation. Rogue's popularity inspired a wave of similar games, forming the term roguelike. These games often innovate on the core formula, adding new mechanics, themes, and visuals while retaining the core elements of challenge and replayability. Hoyo had roguelike in mind when they made ZZZ. The immersive open-world experience was never the focus. The whole TV gameplay is what made it roguelike. So the TV mode is the game. This is basically the core of the whole game. It captures a whole turn-based roguelike feel. Players of roguelikes know that it's pretty fun to imagine what actually happens between the characters, especially in combat. That's pretty much what ZZZ is. A roguelike, except you actually get to see what it looks like when the characters are in combat. And even more so, it's presented in Hoyo's way. And as I mentioned earlier, Hoyo has a reputation for really good scenes. And I mean, it's really good. Just look at this one. But Sala, they advertise it as an action combat game. Shouldn't it have more action? They could have made the game like you said in the last vid. Well, yes, but actually no. There's a theme that they were following. The hollows are ever-changing spaces that you can get easily lost in if you judge by sight. We can imagine in a certain analogy that it's like a four-dimensional realm where we won't understand how to navigate it if we were playing it in real time. Can you imagine the headache it would cause you if you were playing in an open world with 4 dimensions? Anyway, this 4D realm is how they decided to explain how the roguelike works. You go through the same hollow twice, and how you get from start to end will not be the same. The TV map is a map of the current hollow you're traversing. The main character's job is to guide the agents through the hollows so they don't get lost, because the rooms could change its form entirely even though it's the same room. That's pretty much how it would look like if you're moving through a 4-dimensional realm. Now the game isn't going to tell you this, and it's up to you and your imagination to figure this out. That there's no better way to view Hollow than from the TV mode. And if you didn't figure that out, then... well, that's kinda sad actually. People keep complaining that for every 4 minutes of TV, there's only 1 minute of combat, but that's basically what I'm trying to say. The TV mode is the main game and the combat is mostly a glorified cherry on top, so don't be surprised with that sort of gameplay flow. Okay, I know there's people who wants the cherries, but if you're not gonna eat the cake, then don't buy the cake. ZZZ has already made so many compromises for people who aren't actually roguelike players, because of course, the game needs to sell. But if after the changes you still don't like it, then the game really just isn't for you. Now the next thing is the combat. There's an insightful post from the official subreddit that pretty much sums it up. I'll leave it on the screen if you want to read it. But basically, the game doesn't tell you that you suck. You had to figure that out on your own. People saying that the combat is a spam fest against bullet sponges just don't know what they're doing. You had to figure out that you're not playing optimally if you're not dealing enough damage. Seriously, just watch this clip. I will explain exactly what happened in this clip. First, I have to establish in this case that my stunner is Envy, my support is Rina, and my DPS is Piper. After I stun the enemy, there's actually a lot that I have to think inside this QTE window. The enemy is an elite enemy, thus I have 2 QTE triggers. Now some people might think to switch to the support first to give the buffs and then into a DPS so you have the most field time with a DPS. That's actually the first mistake. All 4 current supports should use their QTE last because their QTEs can trigger switch assists, which then should be the cue for your DPS to follow up. After that's done, I use Piper's skill until it reaches max charge, and then I switch into Anby, who does her skill. And while that's happening, I switch into Rena to use her skill, which then triggers an assist switch, which is why Anby is there after everything happened. Important to note though that I messed up the timing with Piper's charge and Rena's assist switch because it should have ended with Piper, and it switched into Anby because it didn't wait that half second until Piper leaves off field. In that 15 seconds, there's so much TR crafting that was put into practice. But Sala, why is your damage so small despite the quote-unquote optimized gameplay? That's because I'm using level 1 characters which theoretically shouldn't even do damage, but I'm only using this extreme example to prove just how much damage you can deal if you play the actual game instead of spamming. The reason why spamming works is that the game doesn't punish you for not playing the game properly, only that you deal 30% damage or less. TLDR, your damage sucks if you suck. The last thing is the open world. Okay, I don't know why there are people wanting an open world. They didn't even advertise this as an open world in the first place, but anyway. Again, if this was an open world game and you go into the hollows physically, then as I've said earlier, you're not going to have much fun navigating a 4D environment. So to sum it all up, the game is a roguelike as a base with action combat elements. And the combat has so much depth, but you may have just not discovered how. Now, all I'm asking is that you view it as a new game and as an entirely different experience, and that comparison to other Hoyo's games is invalid because the core themes of the other games are different. But that's what I think. What do you think? Oh, by the way, the gameplay in the background is my level 1 crew beating up the level 30 rallies.